How's everyone doing this morning? So, actually I'm taping in the morning, but you guys may not be watching it in the morning, so I apologize for the inference. So here's a summary of what we've been doing. So right now we have YT output to be equal to the natural level of output YNT plus YCT. Now I drew a little line here to separate the three equations up above to try to use the board as efficiently as possible. So here's our general model, and then the natural level of output is equal to beta, with some positive constant, plus what the natural level of output was last period, and then plus the supply shock ST. Okay? And then the third equation is YCT, which is alpha, which is a fraction, times YCT minus 1, what the cyclical component of output was last period, plus the demand shock ET. So that's our general model. And then we did in the previous lectures a bunch of algebra, and we got to be able to solve out for YNT, the natural level of output, equals, if you substitute n times, okay, you'll have n of these betas, okay, and that shows the beta is added each period, so the natural level of output just grows each period, okay. And then we have, now I realize I got to do another lecture before I send it out to all you people. So I now realize, yes, so I'm mumbling a little bit, but that's all right. So the big thing is we're adding all the betas up, and that lets the natural level of output grow. And then you have all these supply shocks. Okay? What happened this period, what happened last period, 2 periods ago, or 3 years ago, 4 years ago. The important point here, though, is that these shocks are permanent. They never die out. And that's going to become important with this graph I have down here, which we'll deal with in a moment. Now we have YCT. And YCT is equals just the current and past demand shocks. So we have ET, but now because of the algebra, ET minus 1 is multiplied by alpha. Since alpha is a fraction, it reduces the impact of that ET minus 1, the shock last year, has on the cyclical component of output this year. And then as you go further back in time, ET minus 2 has even a smaller impact on what happened. What happens to YCT in this period, because it's multiplied by alpha squared, and again, since alpha is a fraction, as you raise a fraction to a higher and higher power, that value diminishes. As you go back further in time, as you go back to, let's say, to n periods back, okay, if n is a pretty large number and alpha is a fraction, alpha to n is essentially equal to 0. So this demand shock n periods ago has no impact on YCT today. So, in summary, if we look at this graph, what I've done is I've just freehand the level of output that happened in starting in the early 70s going to 1981, which is right here, and this could be 85. Okay, in the oil price shock recession we had in 73, 74, output's going along, and then output fell. Okay, and then output starts to grow again. Okay, but you see that this shock, we never get back to this long run trend. That's because we had a negative supply shock in a natural level of output, because these shocks are permanent. So we had an S, and I'll write this down, S73 was less than 0, and S74 was less than 0. These two permanent shocks that occurred because of the oil price shocks, and again we'll get into that in great depth next week, these large negative values caused this thing to fall, and output to fall, but we never got back up to that long run trend, which is this one right here, and I'll just draw the dotted thing. We never got back up to that. That's because these shocks occurred in the natural level of output, which caused a permanent reduction in output. Now, if you look at the 81 to 82 recession, you see that, and I'll draw the dotted line, we eventually get to this long run trend. Okay? That's because these shocks came from the cyclical component of output, YCT, because these shocks' importance die out over time, so they don't have a permanent impact. So it did cause a recession, but eventually we got back up to this new long-run trend. So, what we're going to be looking at this semester is recessions that occur because of permanent shocks and because of temporary shocks. And so the Great Recession was permanent shocks. Unfortunately, the coronavirus will most likely be permanent shocks. But we'll talk about that later in the semester. So, okay, let me say goodbye for right now.